Hi, today I will demonstrate in this video how to remove bicycle fork, and we are doing this in order to inspect it, but the procedure is the same even if you are removing it in order to replace headset bearings or any other procedure. So here we have a carbon fiber fork, and my friend wanted to have a look at it to see if there are any cracks or problems, delamination or something similar, at least for what we can visually inspect. And in order to remove it, we will need some tools, of course, and generally you need tools to remove these, loosen these bolts, and since the brake is mounted, the front brake is mounted usually on the front fork, yes, so we will also need to detach the brake in order to have some room to take it out. So the first thing that I will do is to remove the front wheel, because it will literally make it lighter and easier to work with, and it will not be getting in the way. So in this case it's an adapter for through axle, and I just need to unscrew this, getting a bit of better leverage and taking it slow. Okay, it's coming off. I'm holding this with my leg to unscrew it enough, because all the modern forks have these like lawyer lips that don't have any practical use, but except for some lawsuits prevention. Yeah. Okay, so the wheel is off. Now we will need to remove the brake because we will not have enough play in this cable to take the fork all the way out, and for that we need, I think, 5mm Allen wrench. Yes, that's it. Okay, loosen this and loosen this. Okay, and now I will get something more convenient to work with. Okay, one bolt is out, put it here, and the next one. Okay, this has no mounting paste on it, and before we assemble it we'll put some mounting paste on this, and I'll probably put a link on my website where I explain mounting pastes. But here we have these screws that hold the hose in place, and I wish to loosen them as well. This is Allen wrench 3mm, and I just need to loosen it up a bit. I don't need to completely unscrew it. Okay, this one has some dirt inside, and we wish to take that out for good engagement of the tool to not damage the interface. Allen wrenches below the size 5, below the size 4 definitely are a very bad idea for most applications, and those Torx standard of that's different is a lot better, because it offers more engagement and more torque can be applied without anything stripping. Now I'm being very careful. Okay, I've loosened it, and I think that's enough. Let's see if we can move this out, maybe a bit more here. Okay, it's off. Now I want to prevent this from dangling all the way around, so I will just try to tie it with some painting tape. This looks good enough, nothing to scratch here. Of course it's not my bike, so I don't really care, but since my friend is recording this, I have to pretend like I'm paying attention. Okay. Now that the brake caliper is off, we don't want to accidentally engage that brake because it will push the pistons out, get these stuck together, and prevent us from, it will make it difficult to put the wheel back in. So I will just mask this to not forget to don't touch it. Okay, if you are as absent-minded as I am, it's better to mask everything and to do double checks. Now we need to disassemble this. These two pinch bolts are used to hold the stem in place, and top bolt is used to adjust the bearing preload. This one uses cartridge bearings, and it says here, and they seem of a decent quality. I love Ricci headset bearings, they are quite good, even though you pay a bit more for the brand. So we need to get this, we might try selling these were just made for fun, but we'll probably find a way, because a lot of people asked about this. And you can put any beer cap on top of this because it has the same shape as beer bottle, and it's just for decoration. It's made of steel, so it's very durable, and it's not super light, so for all the weight weenies, they will probably avoid this. Anyway, this is off, and we've got a bit of rust here, but that's not a problem for the true cyclists. Yes. Okay, now we will need to loosen the pinch bolts. That's what I will do here. These are very tight. Now, probably some binding between the aluminium stem and the steel bolts, and so when we are mounting them, we will make sure to put some mounting paste that also works as an anti-seize paste and prevent this from getting stuck. Okay, now I will start loosening this bolt, but I want to tighten just one of these pinch bolts to hold this in place so it doesn't just accidentally slip out and surprise us. And now we'll get this off. Okay, it's out. That's it. Now we can work. This is a top spacer. Okay, got that as well. And now this part is a bit confusing to me, because here we have like a bolt, but I think this is the pattern for this expander inside this fork, so we don't need to touch it. We just need to unscrew these two bolts, and before we do that, we need to make sure this is held in place so it doesn't just come off accidentally. Okay, I want to make sure these are quite loose because I don't want to scratch the carbon fork. Okay, these are quite loose now, almost completely out. Okay, and now we'll try to get the stem off slowly and gently. Okay, it's moving. All right, and it's off. Okay, now we will need to hold the stem some way so that it doesn't scratch the frame or anything, and for that I usually use a reserve like a bicycle stand that I have. Some people like to tie this to the frame, but I prefer this. It may look funny, but it works. This is some cheap stand that I use just primarily for this use. It's not very tough, it doesn't allow for any bottom bracket work on a bicycle, but for holding bars in place so they don't scratch the frame, it's perfect. Okay, that's it. It looks okay now. Now we can get back to this. This didn't fall off because it has some sort of a compression ring inside that still exerts some force, and we'll probably have some problems. So we'll probably need to use some force to get it out. Okay, now moving this, there's some water here from rainy rides, and here is the ring that holds it in place. Okay, now we'll just slide this off and take the fork out and inspect it. Okay, that's it. Okay, now we got this out and I will try to first clean it. And now what we are looking for are any kinds of changes in this structure. It's a primitive method of checking forks, but it's the best we can do for free, and practically the best we can do in Serbia, because there are no shops that can inspect carbon fiber parts. And this one looks okay. I don't see any damage here. It looks rather uniform, and as far as I'm concerned, this is good. We can assemble it back together on the bicycle. And the procedure for reassembly is the reverse of the assembly, of course. And as far as lubrication goes, this part is the part that we want to have degreased, because the stem will have to clamp on this. However, we do not want to put any sort of carbon fiber mounting paste onto this, because that will generally over time slide along this length and get into the bearings and damage them. So we will just use some degreaser to make sure this is clean and that it has no grease, and that's it. That's all we want to do. And I will also make sure to degrease the stem before mounting it all back together. Okay, now we'll use some. This is 96% ethanol alcohol, and it's quite good for this use. It's rather clean, and it can dissolve grease. And okay, now I use a clean paper towel to make sure it's all clean. Okay, that's it. Now for this part, once grease gets onto the carbon fiber parts, it's very difficult to get it out. So the best way is to not have them greased at all in the first place. But when it comes to this fork, it was already quite greasy, so we are doing the best we can now. Bearings should be greased, but not the carbon fiber parts. Grease does not damage them, and that's not the problem. Here the problem is the amount of clamping force that is needed to hold the stem in place without it turning and slipping. So here I think this is okay generally. I will close this now and we'll try to remove any excess grease from other parts and try to put it back together. I'm not a huge fan of carbon fiber parts because it's impossible to know if they are going to break, because on metal parts, either steel or aluminium, cracks usually happen on the outside, but with carbon fiber parts, cracks usually start on the inside and then it sort of progresses until they crack without any warning. Often they sometimes do give some kind of warning, but often not. Okay, so I'll try to remove as much grease as I can from everywhere here, because the bearings inside are lubricated. That's enough. If it were an aluminum or steel fork, I wouldn't worry about it, but for this use I want to avoid re-greasing the fork accidentally while I'm trying to mount it. These are just slip fit bearings. They're easy to get in and out using hand, so I'm conveniently removing them and removing any excess grease. This is a tedious, time-consuming procedure, but we'll get there. Okay. Now, having done this, I will put some anti-seize paste on this outer part to prevent it from getting stuck. And now the top one. Okay. It's there. Good. Fork, and here I will put some grease. This is carbon, it's not aluminum or steel, and this part will not get in touch with the stem, so this can be lubricated, and it should be lubricated. Okay. That looks fine. Okay, sits nicely. Okay, now before I reassemble this, I wish to put some anti-seize paste on these threads to make life easier for me later, and to make the assembly faster I want to prepare them in advance. This one, okay, it's ready, and these two for the that hold the brake caliper in place. All right. And I will also post a link to the website article that explains anti-seize pastes. And now I want to make sure that stem bolts are also lubricated, because we had problems with those. And let's see, there is some white grease here, but I'm not sure this is actually anti-seize paste, and I will use anti-seize paste here. The recommended tightening torque for this stem is 5 Newton meters, and in bicycles, when what kind of assembly is used is not noted, you can usually assume that it's meant for unlubricated assembly. So when I put anti-seize paste, I will go for slightly lower tightening torque of some 10 to 20% lower. In this case, I'll go for 4.5 Newton meters, because bolts will turn easier when assembly paste, anti-seize paste is used, and get the same clamping force with lower tightening torque. So we want to prevent over tightening and damaging the stem or the carbon frame fork in this case. Okay, now we're all set to assemble this, and we're doing it in the reversed order from which we had disassembled it. So first we are going to prepare to have everything at near conveniently. These two are the most important, and then we have this. I'll put it here, and we'll go first to make sure not to touch anything on the inside, so this doesn't get greasy. Okay. Okay, this is here now on. All right. Now we need to put this on. Now let's see if it stays in place. Not bad. I will now degrease it further, just in case, just to be on the safe side. Now let's continue placing these spacers. And now we've got one more spacer, and then we put the, but first we put the stem on. Okay, it's ready. Take this away. All right, and now we need just the one last spacer on top and this preloading mechanism. Okay. We didn't make it worse than it was, definitely. Okay. Now we need to make sure that the bearing preload is properly adjusted. What that means is there's no play in the bearing, but it's not too tight. The best way to do that, in my opinion, at least in the experience, is the following. I get it around roughly where I think it should be. Then I tighten these two bolts just by hand. There are some stems that have only one bolt, but as I explained in my article about dangerous patents in cycling industry, I don't think that's very safe. It's better to have two bolts, because this is what keeps control of your bicycle. If one of these bolts breaks, the other will hold, so you have control over bicycle in case something like that happens. Anyway, I just tighten them very, very lightly, and now I can just test this for play to see if I should add more preload on the bearing. Well, this seems like I got it from the first time. When there is some play, you just need to loosen these two bolts a bit, then tighten this preload bolt for like 1/4 of the turn at most, and then retighten these just slightly to check for play. Also, when I put everything back together, including the wheel and the brake, I will do another test when the bicycle is on its wheels, holding the front brake and trying to rock it back and forth, and holding my hand here and here, the other one alternately, to check for any play. We also want to make sure this is centered, and I also prefer to do that when the bicycle is on the ground. So for that, we just need to unscrew these two bolts. This one stays untouched and we just center it. But this looks fairly fine now, so we won't go into any more complications. We'll just put back the wheel and we can put back the brake. But in this video we will not do that, because we need to also replace the brake pads. So we'll make a new video on how to replace these hydraulic disc brake pads. Okay, I hope I've explained everything here, and if you have any other questions or even corrections, you can post the link on, sorry, not the link, but you can use the comment section and ask, but this is how I would do this and how I have done this, and I hope it helps anyone, and thank you for watching. Cheers.